Hello, lovelies. It's Jacqueline Hyde, and you are watching Chit Chat with Jackie, the show where this fat drag queen brings together a bunch of my brand new friends to discuss our lives and issues that affect the LGBTQIA plus community here in the Central Island. Today, we're brought to you by the Nanaimo Pride Society. I've got all my new friends here. We've got Chris, we've got Scott, we've got Autumn. And joining us, we have Vikki Smudge. Oh my God.
Hello, everyone.
Oh my God. The break brought so much. You were just able to do so much.
I still had time for some wine too.
You look gorgeous. So why don't we continue where we left off? We had discussed about gender, we talked about family, we talked about pets, and I think where we left off, we were talking about being raised on the island or the island in general. Chris and Rick, you two are the only ones here that were raised on the island. Rick, I would love to hear from you if you have any experience or any stories about what it was like, because I know that you've been around for a bit, you've seen the world. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's been like growing up in the Central Island in the LGBTQIA plus community?
Okay, so yes, I have been around for a while, but that it gives me that luxury of retiring, not having to work again come June. So I'm okay with being the age I am. So I came out in 1979. Can you imagine? None of you even thought about that. And I was 16. So coming out at 16 in that era was really unheard of. There wasn't a lot of kids my age around, not even in the big cities. Nanaimo was really hardcore. It seemed like everyone knew who I was and would yell, like, you know, I couldn't walk downtown without someone going, faggot. And it always confused me, like, why even paying attention to me? I'm just minding my own business. And in fact, one time, I think I was 15, and do you know Commercial Street, where Commercial and, you know where the rainbow crosswalks are?
Mm-hmm. We do now, yeah. By Flying Fish?
Right in front of Flying Fish. I got beat up there for being gay. So what's so powerful about those rainbow crosswalks still there. I work at Departure Bay, and I live in Cassidy. And so I should just drive straight through. Instead, I turn and I go through downtown every morning because it's quiet at 8:15 to drive over those rainbow crosswalks to remind me of how far Nanaimo has come. I've been known to always say, Nanaimo used to have a lot of bacteria, and finally it has some culture.
The bacteria has culture.
Yes, and back in the old days, there's the hotel, the Dorchester Hotel. It used to be called the Villa, and downstairs was a bar called Blackbeard's, and that's where gay men and women would hang out late at night. Well, not even late, like, you know, right after work. I was allowed to go in there, and I was underage. I think it was like 17 or 18, and I had rules though. If the cops came in, this was the protocol. But the bartender was an old gay guy, and there was no youth groups. So this was the youth group. Then later on in life, like back, and then in the 90s, it became a gay bar again. It became like Nanaimo's first gay bar. And of course, who worked there? Me. I think it's a great place. But yeah, now we have we had a big parade and a big festival. And I think that the other thing that's changed is our ability to meet each other, not necessarily in parks or bars, but with those phones, right? And we can all have community. We can reach out to another queer person really quickly if we need to.
I mean, I'm most interested in knowing how the queer community has evolved here in the Central Island. Like, do you feel like the community has changed or evolved? I know that, like, what are the perceptions, like public perceptions?
In some ways, we've now just blended into the rest of society. I don't necessarily need to go to Blackbeard's downstairs. I can go to any pub and have great fish and chips, right? we've blended so that we're part of the rest of society. We're back in the 80s. I think we needed to be with like mind because it was safer. Back in the 80s, we also used to do this thing called the socials. I mean, all the Nanaimo folks will know what I'm talking about. The socials, they were the last Saturday of every month. And they were held at like the Pleasant Valley Hall for many, many years, or in Harewood, we'd taken over the fire hall and we had small dances there. And, there was a group of us that were sort of putting that all together. Somebody would bring the stereo from home and their own like speakers from their own home. And we'd have these dances the last Saturday of every month. So even when I moved away from Nanaimo, if I was forced to come and see my parents, I would always try and schedule it around the last Saturday of every month, because then I could catch up with my other family too. And that sort of thing we've lost because we sort of blended out and we've gone out in society. We're everywhere now, right?
Being an outlaw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scott, do you have any opinions about that?
About like contemporary.
I know you are also you love to tell people that you could be everyone's father. So I also think that that you potentially have a little history behind you as well. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel like our community has changed on the whole, not necessarily just here on the island, but on the whole? And do we feel like that's a positive thing?
Well, I think you and I had this conversation a couple weeks ago. And, much like Rick, because believe it or not, Rick, we're not that far apart in age. We could have gone to school together. I will say that much. I had the exact same experience in Toronto. There was no youth groups. There was no support for queer kids. And I was a rather precocious child, like at 14 years old, sneaking into gay bars. And, on both sides of the border, I was like going to New York on the weekends. Montreal was a 37-minute, $99 flight. I used to do this all the time with my friends. So, and same thing, if you were a little queer kid and you wanted to go somewhere to be around other queer people, bars were the only option. And, the bartenders all knew we were underage, and it was the same kind of thing. You could hang out here, you could go there, you could dance, you could sit at the bar, but you weren't allowed to drink even though. And then if the cops came in the door, we're out the back door. Interestingly enough, while I was doing that whole lifestyle, that's how I ended up moving to Toronto, because I had all these friends there. The bar did get busted several times. But again, it was one of those things. They would all be like, okay, where are the kids? Get the kids out. And it was almost like this mentoring kind of big brother thing that the older gays would do with the younger gays. And also too, this was at the height of the AIDS crisis. So there was, people that were my age, and then there were people in their 40s. And then there was like this entire generation of gay men that were just gone and dead. So there was a lot of nurturing that was going on in the community because everybody was in shock and we were all in mourning. I think arguments can be made both ways in terms of, is it a positive thing or a negative thing that we've become so homogenized in society? There is that rebel part of me that misses being all about the dark alleys and back rooms and, sneaking in here and sneaking in there and getting away with shit. Oh my God, I miss those days. But at the same time, when I get together with my other gay friends, we're talking about, mortgage renewals, and we're talking about investments, and we're talking about, our new dog or the latest episode of Drag Race. We've become almost boring. And is that a bad thing? It all depends on your perspective. I don't think so. It's given people room. It's given people space to be themselves and to express themselves so that we can talk about the word queer and is it a good thing or a bad thing, and it's not something that gets hurled at us as we're running away down the street from something.
All right. And Autumn, do you have a view on that?
I always have a view on things.
Yeah. So that's why we invited you. I want your passion.
Thank you. And I am very passionate, and sometimes it freaks people out, and I don't really care. But you know what? I think what I'm hearing, what I was thinking as you were both sharing, is that for me, I grew up in rural Saskatchewan, like very rural Saskatchewan, like I said, I was born in 75, and so I was 10 in 85, and so yeah. What I'll say is that for me, there wasn't even the idea of being able to go to a gay bar. There wasn't any of that in my town. What there was heteronormative practices, and the idea that to be anything other was to be sick, to be deranged, to be put out of society wholeheartedly. I only was aware of one lesbian in my town, and she moved to Vancouver because they were that cruel to her. And so, there was this shame that happened. And for me, the moment as I was growing up and starting to feel my own sexuality and know my own self, what I knew myself to be immediately was some sort of sick, some sort of not okay, some sort of, you are disgusting this way. And so you need to push that down. And I gave in to compulsory heteronormative, right? Or normalcy. And I married a man. And I pushed that part of myself so far away that I didn't rediscover it until after my divorce at 33 years old. And so this stuff is still happening. You know what I mean? And so for me, there was no back alley anything. There was push it down. Do not admit even to yourself, because your life depends on it, that you are gay. And then, I moved to Vancouver, and I don't think I could have come out of the closet in a better city, right? Like I was like, oh my God, I'm gay. And then there was just like a herd of lesbians who were like, yes, you are, and we love you, and come, let's party and dance. And, like I discovered that there's this whole beautiful, wonderful community that I could find. And so do we need a community? I would say so. Do we need pride? I would say so. And as and now I've moved here and I love it here. Having said that, I think that we still have work to do. We still have a ton of work to do. I just responded to 10 hours of trans vitriol with the Pride Society, like serious trans bashing here on the island. These are island people doing these things. Further to that, there are still kids being bullied in school for being non-binary. And we're talking young kids and youth. And we're not talking like a little bit, right? We're talking children are still committing suicide. People are still committing suicide because they're gay. So do we need a community? Absolutely, we need a community. And do we need to stay united? Absolutely. And do we need to be visual, like so that people know where to find us? I believe so. So that's my feeling on it. Yeah, absolutely. And absolutely, it's wonderful that we're out and we're proud. And I think we need to be out and proud and have that strong, united community so that children who are still being told they're going to hell, and that's happening right here on the island too, and all over Canada. I don't want to say that that's an island thing or our neighborhood thing. All over the world, children are still being told they're going to go to hell because they're gay. And so, you know what? I want those children to know we're here and exactly where to find us.
Exactly. Do you feel like your experience would have been different if the internet was around and the resources that are available today?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there, like I said, the only lesbian I knew was the woman that my mom and her friends would discuss, like, oh my God, did you hear? She left her husband for, like this sort of thing, and left to the other side of Canada. So no, there was none of that. There was none of this idea that I could, watch a conversation like this or hear this on the radio or something, where I could identify with that part of myself being okay.
Well, the last time I ever experienced any kind of homophobia was in the Comox Valley.
Oh yeah, it's here. It was
just not that long ago. I came to read to children in a library in drag queens telling stories. And some woman attacked me right in front of small children and everything. It was awful. And I thought, what, here? No, we're in the next decade. But yeah, it was frightening.
They were being expressed loudly and by prominent people here. So, I I think we need someone who's happy to speak loudly and proudly about this issue here in the Valley. There's still hope here in the Valley. There are people standing up. There are people and agencies. We've had agency to agency discussions. There are people who are willing and ready to like step into that arena. People say to me, Autumn, you're so much in the arena. You know what I mean? But what else am I going to do? Right? We need to be in the arena. And so I think that we have a strong stance and we have a strong pull towards equity, diversity, and inclusion here as well. So it's a wonderful thing that what's happening now is you used to really had to hide your gayness. You had to hide this part of yourself that was being oppressed. And I think a little bit that it's starting to shift so that you have to hide your inner oppressor a little bit more. Because these millennials, these folks that are growing up now, they're not going to tolerate it. They're going to videotape. They're going to call you out on it. Now it's that which you have to hide. You know, you have to hide your inner discriminator, you know, which I'm all down for that, you know, like push that stuff down if you need to, for sure.
Holding people accountable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as one of those millennials that have been able to grow up in a time where it's far more accepted after so much work is done by the people before my generation and before yours, I find it really empowering when I get to hear the stories of those times and how heartbreaking and how hard it was just to be who you are. So I take up that torch full-heartedly to do the work that I can do with the students that get placed in front of me, and I just get to give them all of the love and show them that whoever they are inside can be the person that they show on the outside. They don't have to suppress that or hide that. They can grow and change and evolve as the time goes on. Truly.
And all of us who are able to like stand here and have this conversation, we truly stand on the shoulders of those who fought before us so that we could have this voice. It would be a great disservice to them, I think, to think that it's not needed now that we have it.
Absolutely. And I 100% agree. And I feel like we are in an era where there's enough acceptance that I think a lot of young people don't feel the need to seek out, I guess, community or seek out even the history of like how we got to where we are now. Do we feel like there is a need for, let's call it education, a level of education on this level of civil rights here in Canada?
I completely say yes. It's very important for our youth and our younger generations to understand where we've come from, to know where we could easily fall back into if we don't raise our voices and empower ourselves. It also makes them think critically on things that are happening in our government right now. Younger voices that are calling to action. There are so many youth Indigenous voices out there that are screaming ideas to be listened to and are phenomenal. All we have to do is listen. The answers are here. The answers are with our youth as well as our elders. It's that community of coming together and having all voices heard and all voices listened to is where we can find that middle ground to allow for everybody to be accepted.
And, you know, Chris, you raise a valid point. And, you know, we saw a recent example in the US with, you know, I hate to bring up his name and give him any type of attention.
Don't say it! Don't say it!
You all know who I'm talking about. He who will not be named. But, you know, there was, you know, Obama lulled us into this false sense of security that the world had evolved and that we were past all this. And then, you know, we got dragged right back 20 years with one election. You know, for me, I know I was shocked. I don't even follow politics to that degree, especially not in the US. But I was like, oh my God, what does this mean? And I think globally, we all went, oh my God, what does this mean? And you're right, it does still happen, and we have to remain vigilant. And if we're not aware of history, then we're doomed to repeat it.
Well, truthfully, this is why we have Remembrance Day and all sorts of other things. The fact is that there is, in my opinion, and I've been working in advocacy and the social services realm for a long time. I've been working with people in recovery and all sorts of things. And you know what? I really don't believe there's a solution that will maintain itself. And that, and I have a trans friend who is ex-military, and he said, you get to keep the territory that you can protect, right? So if we've gained some territory, if we've gained the ability to have this voice, then that is worth protecting on every level. Further, I would venture to say that we're just not there yet. Like if we, for instance, one of the things that I'm advocating for in our area right now, and educating around, is that, for instance, I don't know if you know this, but the stats are that trans individuals are the most likely individuals to become homeless, and of trans individuals who become homeless, they are the most likely to be unsheltered of homeless individuals, seconded only by the intersection of being trans and a person of color. How many non-binary shelter beds have you heard about? We don't have one in the Valley. Zero. So if you have this issue where you are of the highest demographic in need of these services, and then you are the least likely to find a bed that is assigned to you, that in and of itself says we have a lot of work to do, because there's a significant denial of these folks' very existence, never mind their needs, that we are still conducting so many realms on the binary. All sporting institutions there's a whole bunch of crap going around on the internet about, should trans women be able to participate in sporting, things. So competitions, because as in a male body, they have the male strength, and then they compete in women's competitions. But the thing is it's not about that. It's not about those individuals. And people are saying, oh, exclude these trans individuals based on the fact that they're stronger. It's about the systemic issue that we're conducting things on the binary in the first place. Why are there only two? Why are there only two? We have a multitude of different, like we said in the last episode, I see at least 5 different genders. Why are only 2 of them represented? We have a lot of work to do, in my opinion.
Where do you suggest that we start?
Well, I would start by we need to define the issues. What are the issues? Where are the gaps still? Those are 2 that 3 really we've discussed. We've discussed children and youth still getting bullied for being outside of the binary. We can see that we're not represented in many different realms, including everything from social services to sporting events, right? And we can see that there are ways in which we need to be visual and continue to celebrate and be available to those who need to be able to model themselves well. So right there are 3 different places that we can take action. I mean, we've written letters agency to agency. We can talk to one another about those needs. We can write letters to our local government. We can do all sorts of things to advocate for one another, but not if we get to that place of complacency. Not if we sit back and say, okay, well, I have my nice life, and forget about those people who still may not, right? So like I said, I feel that as a community, and I keep saying this, and we've actually moved our slogan to this, is that we're stronger united. That's the other thing, is sometimes as marginalized individuals, we can really start to fight with one another like siblings, But whether we fight with one another as siblings or that lateral sort of violence kind of thing, we have to remember that for many of us, we are the only safe family around. And so we need one another, and we are stronger united. So we need to set sort of difficulties aside and then really look, what does our overall family need? And fight for that.
Oh my gosh. There's the emotion. Oh my God. Sorry, guys. I'm a drag queen who's just super emotional about everything.
Comox Valley is really fortunate that they have you up there as a voice.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
What you just said summarized all of the thoughts that I couldn't put into words. Like, there are still horrific things happening to our community and to our youth in particular.
And those youth deserve, like, people fought so that we could sit here and have this conversation.
Yeah.
Those youth and those children, they deserve our fight. They really do. Yeah.
Like the bartenders that risked their jobs and stuff for me and you, Scott. We need to do that same thing in a different way, but we need to put ourselves at risk to help them.
Drag queens were at the forefront of everything. You
Yeah.
know, from Stonewall right up to, you know, what Daniel's doing right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And you know, people like you, Chris, who are taking this into the schools and teaching people how to deal with each other with dignity and respect, right? And that can get lost, and who's to teach them if we are not? So you're stepping into that arena. That's a wonderful way to create action around equity, diversity, and inclusivity.
You know, it's funny, Autumn. I just recently became aware. I was delivering this program, and there's this company, Respect Inc., and they have a program that you can subscribe to called Respect in the Workplace.
Wonderful.
And there is so much trans content in there, in how to deal with people in the workplace who are transitioning or announcing transitioning. And, you know, as a queer person, I was reviewing this so I could deliver it to this group. And I was blown away. I actually had to pause it and take a moment because I never thought I'd see this day. You know, even in my several years on this planet, like the evolution that we're seeing in other communities, and, you know, especially for something like this that's mainstream. And, you know, it's not just social services that are presenting this program. I've heard from other sources that, you know, when you get hired at Walmart in management, you have to take this program. When you get hired in these bigger companies, you have to take this program, and you get a certificate at the end for your file. So, you know, even just some of the shows that I've done about trans people and trans awareness and gender dysphoria and what that looks like. You know, I've learned more about this in the past 2 years than I have in the past 20.
Yeah. I think that there's a new standard for cultural competence, to be honest. And I really love those two words put together, culture and competence, right? And because that is really, you know, encompassing a lot of things, whether we're talking about racial issues, sexuality issues, gender issues, you know, all of that comes under, are you conducting yourself as a business, as an educator, as a spokesperson, with cultural competence? And what does that mean? And I love the idea of raising the bar on that front.
I love that, raising the bar. Let's keep doing that.
Let's keep raising it. Last year, I took senior management at BC Ferries to an Ivan Coyote speech, where they were talking about their lives and stuff. And BC Ferries knows that they're a public business, and they know we got to look at washrooms. They know we got to look at all this stuff. And so I thought Ivan Coyote's the best person. And they came. So all of us could do just that little tiny bit, which we might not think is big and effective, but down the road, it's huge.
Huge. It was tiny micro movements all put together that made this huge macro movement of these human rights that we have now.
Yeah, that's spectacular. Autumn, you actually did touch on something a little earlier in regard to sport. I actually find it really interesting because recently there's been a lot of people coming out, like pro athletes coming out as gay, lesbian, transgender. How do we feel about the role of representation when it comes to public figures? On the whole, how do you feel like let's just use competitive sport in general as a starting point? Like, do you feel like competitive sport fits into the LGBTQIA plus? Let's use the word agenda. I'm going to use the word agenda. I'm going to be super political. Do you feel like it fits in the idea of competition and within the community?
Yeah. So to be clear, what you're asking is, how do we feel about queer representation in sports? Is that?
Yeah, queer representation, sport in just as a starting point. But I think that there's, representation in like Elliot Page, and there's so many people who have recently come out that I think have brought a spotlight to a lot of the issues that we experience on a day-to-day basis.
Like there would be no women's gold medal in Canada without lesbians. Let's just say that.
Yeah. I think it's awesome. I think representation in sports is in sport, in politics, in movies, in all of the things. I grew up and I couldn't see myself in anyone. And then you combine that with shame. And then I had to go into a situation where I wasn't able to be myself, to know myself. And because of that, all sorts of stuff can happen if you're not able to inhabit your own life in your own body. All sorts of things like addictions and trauma and all sorts of like mental health issues. These are all very, very closely linked to oppression and to being on the outside of a community looking in. As humans, so much depends on our ability to connect with one another and to stay connected with our own selves. And so for my children to be able to not only as women, like I have two young women, they're 23 and 20 now, and they can see themselves as women in all sorts of leadership positions. My daughter's 23, she runs her own company, for God's sake. I never saw that growing up, right? So modeling exception, modeling for success, modeling for empowerment.
And I think it's super important for us to have the representation across platforms, not necessarily just competitive sport, just to give that beacon of hope or that light to the queer kids.
I have been most recently, I think that the reason that this is something that I thought was interesting to ask is Gabby Tuff, who just recently came out as trans at the beginning of February, who is a former WWE wrestler, used like an entire month of her platform on Instagram to truly break down toxic masculinity. This idea of that this WWE wrestler, former WWE wrestler, would use the platform, and some of the first images was just her presenting as male with acrylic nails on. And the idea of this person who was really gigantic, let's just say it, when she presented as male and was a WWE wrestler, using the platform in that way was super inspiring to me. I'm not trans, but I certainly thought that was an amazing step forward, because I truly do think, as a femi-gay boy, seeing I don't know, my idea of who I could be was not a football player. It wasn't a wrestler. So I never went down that road, because I didn't fit the model of what the expectation of those people were, or a hockey player. Not that I was ever interested in sports, but it was never anything that was available to me. I mean, I could be a dancer, I could be all of these things. Even back in the 80s, it was still acceptable for me. I mean, let's not use the word acceptable so much, but it would have been understandable for me to want to do figure skating or things that were a little gayer. And to see pro athletes, people on football teams and WWE wrestlers coming out who have lived a very masculine life and coming out and speaking about how toxic that kind of masculine energy can be in competitive sport. So yeah, that's just my personal experience.
Well,
Something that really resonated with me.
You know what? As someone who fights for women's rights, I run something called the Women Who Inspire Conference, and we do that to elevate female voices. We're still, as females in the world, and I don't believe in gender blindness, because I think that being gender blind makes you blind also to gender inequalities. So it's important that we don't lose diversity when we're talking about equity. And so as someone who fights for women's rights across the board, I want to say that really when somebody who was once a male, like I didn't see the person that you were talking about, the wrestler, but what I know is that a lot of when you start to break down toxic masculinity, so much of toxic masculinity is really based in misogyny and the hatred of women and the hatred of having any sort of female aspects to the male self, So when someone like this person that you're talking about, chooses to really embrace that feminine side of themselves at the same time as talking about that toxic masculinity, which really is toxic not only to females but to males especially. What you're talking about is an elevated level of health in our overall communities. Wonderful. I think really the more we have these conversations just like this, conversations like that person, the more we just get out there and continue to change that narrative, overall, you're just looking at raising that bar. Again, we're talking about raising the bar.
Rick or Scott or
I'm gonna go on a totally different topic because something happened.
Absolutely.
Something happened the other day. Some religious people came to my home.
Oh, fun.
And they had children with them. They're not supposed to be on my home, so I quickly reminded them that I'm on the do not call list and they needed to leave my property. But as they left, the boy looked effeminate. So I wondered about this child, and I thought, what kind of life has he got? Like, we can talk about sports, we can talk about growing up in Nanaimo or in Saskatchewan, but what about these people, these kids growing up in these religions where if they come out, they have no family left, they have nothing. Everything in their world is gone. We don't seem to talk about those little kids very often.
Well, it absolutely happens in every area. And so, I think that those little kids are, they're facing a lot of what kids like I faced growing up face. And, the stronger the presence that we have overall. And, I often say, we want to create a big, safe basket in which we can catch these children. Yeah. As they're dropping out of the nest, if we just catch them and make that landing a little softer, I think we're doing our part.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Northern Alberta in a very traditionally born-again Christian community. And I mean, I was one of the lucky ones because I was raised in a family where we only listened to Christian music. It wasn't like something where I had a lot of experience. We didn't have a TV until I was 9 years old. so I didn't have a lot of people to look to, but I was also raised in an environment where, you know, you are who you are. And I'm not going to say that my mom was super proud of me every minute of my life, but my mom was also super artistic. She owned a craft store. She was a dancer. She sang. That's what she did. So I was absolutely one of the lucky ones, because it was never, we were raised poor. I never felt like we were poor. I was gay. I never felt like I was going to, you know, let's just say it, I never felt like I was going to hell because I was gay, and nobody ever came down on me. So I was super, super lucky, and I absolutely acknowledge the privilege that I have of not experiencing that, but that wasn't the experience of everybody from that community. So I was in church. I certainly remember having conversations about it, or it being brought up in Bible study and, you know, Sunday school and stuff. But maybe I just compartmentalized things better. I never really made the connection or felt like I should hate myself for who I was. So, but I definitely agree, Rick, that that there's we have to think about these people in general, not just as children, but as adults. Like, who are these people going to become? And it's not about, in my opinion, it's not about saving somebody so much as what you were saying, Autumn, is providing a soft place to fall. Like, if and when they feel that that they're falling, that we provide them not with like, oh, and you're gay and I'm going to show you everything that it's about, but a soft place to land for them to find themselves. Whether that be that they are gay or trans or cisgender straight individuals that just don't necessarily agree with all aspects of how they were raised. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Well, and you know, I don't want to blanket comment sort of Christianity either. We have a wonderful pastor out here from the United Church who really has broken down sort of those beliefs and is probably one of the most inclusive Christian churches that I've ever seen. And, you know, she actually will step into the arena to advocate for the LGBTQI+ community overall. So, you know, what a wonderful gift she is.
Daniel, just what you were saying too, growing up in, you know, small town Niagara Falls, I went to, you know, I come from a wealthy family. I mean, I'm, you know, grew up with a lot of privilege, and I'm still checking my privilege, but that's my experience. And I went to a Catholic private school where I was kicked out, and you know, because I had pink hair, and you know, even as a child, I had an inordinate amount of self-confidence, and basically the school had no idea what to do with me. So they called my parents in and said, you know, Scott will never graduate from this school because he doesn't share our values. Well, in my little mind, I won the lottery because I never had to go back to that horrible place again. So where, you know, they were trying to make it a shameful thing, I really, you know, in my little 16-year-old brain was like, woohoo, something to celebrate. And this was something great. You know, and again, my parents had no idea what to do with me because they were like, oh, this is terrible. You're never allowed back at that school. And I'm like, no, this is awesome. This is what I've been wanting for the past 3 years. So, you know, I know when we look at these kids, you know, we want to represent and we want to be there. But at the same time, you know, how do we provide these safe spaces, and how do they know where to find us? And when I say us, I mean us as a community. Like, where do we point them to? For these 14, 15, 16-year-old kids who know their mind, know they're queer, and are looking for support and reaching out. So where do they go?
So I have some personal experience around.
I would love to hear it.
So I was not a privileged child. I grew up in a really not so great environment. And I was in foster care at 14. And then I spent time on the streets, and then back into foster care, and then back out on the streets. And I can remember sleeping under the stairs of an apartment building and walking out with my backpack. And some woman with privilege who lived in that apartment building screaming at me at the top of her lungs to get out of here, you little rat, at 14, 15. And so rather than like someone who says, oh my gosh, do you not have a place to sleep? It was, get out from underneath our stairs, you rat, And so these were the environments that I had growing up. And now there was always sort of some social worker or something in the peripheral, right? Had there been someone paying attention at school, like Chris paying attention at school, someone to talk to, someone who I could have went to who would have believed me, then, that's where we're starting with these things. Had there been safe shelter beds, even at the time, we would have been speaking about a different story. But for me, there wasn't even a safe foster kid bed at the time, which, because of the lack of safety in the foster system, then you end up on the streets, So what we're talking about is very real systemic change. We're talking about, like I said, non-binary beds and shelters. We're talking about, from that very spot, what I can see and what I can say is that would have helped me a lot. And especially to have the kind of professionals who would have reached out and spoken to me on a level of understanding that really mattered, But I think we get a real divide between the service providers and people who actually understand. So I think we need to have more conversations, also more of these conversations where we're saying to people who are actually in those situations, what do you need? What do you need? What would make this journey easier for you?
Oh my Lord. Can I just have like 1 ounce of the amount of passion and knowledge that you have? My gosh. Oh my God, you make this, all 4 of you that are here right now. I just have to personally acknowledge that every single one of you brings so much to this community. And I'm so grateful to, have the opportunity to talk to you and to have started this silly little platform that I thought would just be kind of, let's have cute little conversations and talk about the community here in the Central Island and really try and build out a connection, because I really think that that's something that we're missing here in Nanaimo and in the Central Island, is a real connection to our community and a real sense of community and sense of being. And honestly, I mean, oh my gosh, and Scott, your voice is so brilliant, and I thank you all the time for starting your platform. And Rick, I know that you have been around and you've been a pioneer of the community here in Nanaimo and in the Central Island. I mean, your reach is so far. I know even onto the mainland and the Greater Vancouver area and through BC. I mean, your reach is so far, and your voice is refreshing. And Chris, I mean, we look to you for all of the resources. We look to you for really what we should expect of educators here in BC in general and in this island. I honestly, I just want to thank everybody here. I know we are coming to the end, and this was such a beautiful conversation to be a part of, and I feel honored to be hosting everybody here. And I really want the conversation to continue. Let's keep the conversation going, maybe in the comments down here. And I really hope that we can get the reach out, and we can engage more of this. I know it's a beautiful community here. I know that everybody that I've come into contact here in the Central Island gay community has been so welcoming and just, I'm going to say, beautiful again. It's an amazing experience, but we've only touched just a grain of sand in the beach that is this community. And if we can reach just a small portion of them, and we can engage and keep people talking, I know that we can all come together as a community. So I am going to give everybody one last chance, some last words. So why don't we start with Rick? Rick, do you have some last words for us?
You know what they always say, behind every great man is a great woman, and when you're queer, behind every great man is another great man. This is my husband of 23 years. There he is. There's Owen. He hates being in front of the camera. There he is. That's Owen, and I love him. Hello.
And he'll be on our next Chit Chat, so he's got to get used to being in front of the camera.
No, we don't like him to tell stories. No, he can go away now.
What would you like to promote?
Just that I'm retiring in June, so watch out for me.
Where can we find you?
You can find me on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. Vikki Smudge, Vikki Smudge, like that smudge.
Awesome. Chris, what would you like to leave us with today?
I would like to start by saying thank you. Jacqueline, you provide us such a safe place to discuss such important topics about our community, and get the community starting to have conversations on their own about stuff that we're talking about. I also would like to end on with a quote that actually, Autumn, I think you talked about raising the bar, and in the education world, I ensure that I raise the bar for my students, but I'm also there helping them get to it. I'm not going to say this is where you need to get, and I'm not going to help you get there. This is where the bar is set because I know that you can get there with my help. And I think that's something that we as a queer community need to make sure that we set the bar high for society, set the bar high for our youth, and help them achieve the greatness that we know that we can all do. And I'd like to promote that we've got lots of things happening for the Nanaimo Pride Society coming up, and all of it will be on our website under the events tab. You can get tickets as well as see what we're up to.
Awesome. And how can we reach out to you if we need to?
Nanaimo Pride Society email is chrisperrier@nanaimopride.ca. I will drop that in the link below.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Scott, any final words? Anything you want to leave us with?
Well, I really, really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for having me. And, I've learned so much, even just sitting here and listening to what everybody else has to say in our positions. I contributed to a book, and it's called Daring to Share, From There to Here. I'm in volume 1, chapter 2, entitled Integrity. It's all about my midlife crisis, and my better half wrote about, he contributed to the same book, and we're back-to-back chapters. So as much as mine's about my midlife crisis, his is my midlife crisis from his point of view. And he's a beautiful soul who's not around right now where I'd introduce you. Yeah, and I'm working on a solo book right now, from the queer perspective, and the TV show. So I've got lots of projects on the go, but the best way to see that and to hear all about it is Google me. So I'm the only Scott to Freitas-Graff in the world. You can find me on Instagram. I'm always looking for new Facebook friends. And please reach out if anything you heard here inspires you. I would love to have a conversation. So great to meet all of you. And thank you so much for having me again.
Now, Autumn, final words.
Well, again, my name is Autumn Rock. You can find me online on Facebook, comoxvalleypride.ca. You can look for us there. Women Who Inspire Conference, rockliferecovery.ca. I've been recovering addict I've been in recovery for almost a quarter century, and I mentor other people through trauma recovery and regular recovery and all the things. So you can find me online on Facebook. Again, just Google Autumn Rock, you'll find me. There's also a few talks on there. If you want to hear more about that journey, you're welcome to find that on YouTube. Really, I think the most important words for today is just that we're stronger united, and we really need to stand together and move towards greater cultural competence all around. I think we deserve it. And I think we're worth fighting for.
Awesome. And if there's anybody in the Comox Valley that wants to be a part or wants to engage with the Pride Society, how would they reach out to you? Do you have a website?
Yeah, we have a website. We comoxvalleypride.ca. We also are on Facebook. We have a page and a group, and you're welcome to join that. We also have something out there called the Safe Equity, Diversity, and Inclusivity Pledge. And you can find that on our website as well. So if you're someone who really wants to, step into your own call to action, step into your own commitment around equity, diversity, and inclusivity, please go online, find us at comoxvalleypride.ca, sign the pledge, let us know that you've done that. We'd love to do a shout out to you online as well. Thank you.
Awesome. And I know that Nanaimo Pride Society is looking forward to all of the future events and collaborations with Comox Valley Pride. So we're certainly happy that we were able to get you on this call today.
Oh, we forgot to mention dinner and a movie.
Oh,
here, add it now.
Yeah, so we have dinner and a movie at the end, last Friday of every month. If you enjoyed this conversation and really would like to have more conversations with us, please come out to a virtual dinner and a movie where we make dinner in our own kitchens and share that dinner together. And then we choose we have Alberni Pride has picked a movie, Nanaimo Pride has picked a movie, and Comox Valley Pride has picked a movie, and you can vote as to which one you would like to and then we watch that movie together at the end of each month. So we would love for anyone who enjoyed this conversation or anyone who just wants to get to know us more to come out and join us with that.
Awesome. All right. And as everybody knows, I am Jackylly Hyde, #TheFatDragQueen. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please like, comment, subscribe. When this gets on YouTube, you want to ring that bell for Nanaimo Pride Society. Make sure that you're subscribed so that you see as much of this content as possible. And until next time, I want you to remember that your voice matters.